I'm up on the second floor of the Shanghai Museum. This Indian Buddhist art exhibit runs through February 2015. Today's the second day of 2015, if I have it right. I was only home in New York for 12 hours before I hopped the plane back to China. This time Shanghai, I was in Beijing. Let's see. So they're going to go over here, the history of Buddhism through art, but it's not a very comprehensive exhibit in my opinion. Or maybe I'm just not that interested in the specifics of the life of the Buddha, the quote historical life of the Buddha, nor the specific pantheon, all the different bodhisattvas of the pantheon. It gets a bit ridiculous, really. But essentially, Gautama Buddha Siddhartha was an aristocrat who refuted the princely life in search of a way to attain wisdom and relief from suffering. Gautama Sakyamuni. Let's see. Salvation through moral discipline required no anthropomorphic representation of the master. So they talk about here in the two different sects of Buddhism that evolved. You have Theravada, and first is Theravada, and then comes Mahayana. And Mahayana has iconic representations of the Buddha. He becomes deified and worshipped, and they show his body. But in the art of Theravada, it's more symbolic. They don't show his body, similar to what you see in the Muslim religion. So in Buddhist art of the pre-Christian era, represented through things like an empty throne, Bodhi tree, pair of footprints, etc., a wheel. Slow, steady process, iconic manifestation of the Buddha, new forms of art. Change of religion is called Mahayana. Let's see. Concept of Trikaya, the three bodies of the Buddha. Dharmakaya, law body. Sabogakaya, body of bliss. And Anakaya, body of moral shape. Final esoteric stage. Vajrayana. Concept of Adi Buddha, self-created primordial being. Panchajanas emanated from this, and a host of bodhisattvas with their female counterparts emerged later. Let's see, Buddhist centers, Barhut, Sanchi, Mathura, Sarnath, Amaravati, Nalanda, etc. Indo-Gangetic plains in India are similar to the cradle of civilization you have in China around the Yangtze and Yellow rivers. Gandhara and Gupta style have influenced Chinese art. In return, paper, silk, porcelain, tea, classical music influenced Indian culture. The Gandhara style has elements of Greco-Roman sculpture as well. They say that in the sculpture section actually here in the Shanghai Museum, and I've seen it in other exhibits noted, particularly in the face of the shape of the face. Life of the Buddha, sage of the Sakyas, Sakyamuni. He was born into the Kshatriya clan of the Sakyas. His father was the chief Suddhodana. Mom was Maha Maya, or Maya. She dreamt of a white elephant entering her body. went into confinement, gave birth to the Buddha in Lumbini, Agrova Lumbini. No one knows when he was born, either 566 or 563 BCE. He reached 29 years of age. He saw 3 sights: decrepit man, sick man, corpse of a man. And that made him realize the misery of existence and the fleeting character of worldly pleasure. If you're 29 and you only realize your own mortality, you've led a pretty sheltered lifestyle. Most people realize it at like age 4 or 5, I think. That you're going to die someday. I did. And also the fact that your whole life could really just be a dream once you understand what dreams are. So he cut off his hair, discarded his royal attire, took the robe of recluse, became homeless wanderer in search of truth, liberation from the cycle of rebirth, because in India they believe in the karma and rebirth system of gives rise to the caste system and all that. He came to Uruvela, where for 6 years he went through the ordeal of severest austerities, became a skeleton, didn't have the results he wanted, decided self-mortification wouldn't work, so he started eating just enough food to sustain him. Then he sat under a pipal tree, later became known as a Bodhi tree, went into meditation and attained enlightenment. Discovered truth, became a Buddha, the enlightened. Let's see. He preached his Dharma to 5 former companions, gave an exposition of the Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, went to them and delivered his first sermon. Buddhist terminology, it's called Dharma Chakra Pravartana, the wheel of law and motion. 5 ascetics at once converted and formed the nucleus of the Sangha, congregation or order. Buddha preached new religion for long, and at the age of 79, in the suburbs of Kusangara, capital of Malas, passed away peacefully. Malas cremated his body, befitting a universal king. On hearing the news, several people came to claim the bones and ashes as relics to use in stupas, and such was born the cult of the stupa. This is birth and early stage. Second stage of Buddha's life. A lot of this stuff's not that interesting to me to look at. Different poses. When I went to the temple in Chinatown in Bangkok, they had an exhibit on all the different little hand symbols and feet positions in those different statues and what they can mean. They all have different names and symbols. Mahaparinirvana. He was leaning on his elbow, lying down on his side when he reached enlightenment, supposedly, and reached nirvana, died, I think. So that's what they show him in a lot of poses when he reaches nirvana, on his elbow. They have that huge statue in Bangkok of him like that. Last stage of his life. The problems I have with religion are that the dogma forces upon you a man-made fantasy mythology. Growth of the religion, deliverance through one's own efforts. Asked his disciples to accept Dhamma as their guide and themselves as their own refuge. People came to regard him more as a divine being than a human teacher, considered his mercy or karuna as the savior. Hallowed presence. Let's see, first sermon and Kusinara attained enlightenment. So these are all the different areas, right? Lumbini was where he was born. Bodh Gaya, place where he attained enlightenment. Sarnath delivered first sermon, and Kusinara where he attained nirvana. So these all became places of worship, huh? The Maurya Emperor Asaka was a leading role in the dissemination of the religion after he converted to Buddhism. Let's see. He built Asokarama, Pataliputra, opened 7 relic stupas, took away the major portion of relics for distribution among 84,000 stupas built by him throughout the empire. Asoka's interest in the Sangha made him summon the Third Buddhist Council at Pataliputra. After the fall of the Mauryas, building activities continued on at an accelerated pace, etc., etc. Let's see, the mercantile community was a big exponent of Buddhism. Large number of Buddhist monuments, celebrated stupas at Sanchi and Bharut built by them in central India, and the Maha Chitya at Amaravati. Object of these carvings, Buddhist monuments, was to glorify the Buddha. Natural that the themes are generally edifying in nature, depicting the Jatakas, stories of his previous birth, and scenes from the life of the Buddha himself. Under the active patronage of Kushanas, 1st and 2nd century, the Gandhara school of art flourished in the northwest part of the subcontinent. This school, along with the contemporary Mathura school of art, produced for the first time the anthropomorphic representation of the master. Simultaneously with the liberal interpretation of the doctrine, the image of the Buddha evolved. He was no longer a teacher or even a superman whose presence was to be indicated by symbols. He was deified, and the common man was satisfied by embellishing and ceremoniously worshipping the image of the Savior with prayers and incantations, seeking his redeeming grace. Worship as chakra. Buddha with Avalokitesvara, Maitreya. Footprint of the Buddha. The Pantheon. Buddhist art of India reflects faithfully the changes that the religion underwent in the course of its history. Centers like Mathura, Sarnath, Nagarjunakonda, Goli, etc. Produced abundant sculptures inspired by the changed religion during the Gupta period. Post-Gupta, important centers, Nalanda, Vikramsila, Somapura, Odantapuri, Jagadala, all flourished under active patronage of the Pala rulers of eastern India. Hundreds of deities in the Buddhist pantheon, first entirely aniconic in character. Shows how symbols like the stupa, the tree, the footprint were worshipped to signify the presence of the Buddha. Let's see. But with the introduction of Mahayana philosophy, there was a radical change in the structure of Buddhist iconography. Let's see. They based their conception of a great man having distinctive signs of greatness, Mahapurusha Lakshanas. Next to the Buddha, noblest figures in Mahayana literature and pantheon bodhisattvas who, out of karuna, compassion, refuse to go to heaven, nirvana, until they're delivered. Though innumerable bodhisattvas are mentioned in the Buddhist literature, the two most important are Avalokitesvara and Manjusri. Avalokitesvara is Guanyin in China, bodhisattva of mercy, and a male bodhisattva in India. Japan, it was canon, female as well, Avalokitesvara, bodhisattva of mercy. In popular worship, the bodhisattvas are always invoked as they are supposed to possess inexhaustible power to save the devotee. Let's see, one of the aspects of Mahayana pantheon is the worship of female deities. The practice, coupled with belief in the efficacy of mantras, magic spells, mandalas, magic circles, gave Mahayanism a new form, broadly known as Tantric Buddhism. Among the females, Tara occupies the most prominent position. The hierarchy of the gods in Mahayana Tantra Yana practice has been determined with wonderful precision. At the head of the pantheon is Adi, primordial Buddha, from whom have originated the five divine Buddhas in meditation, namely Varochana, Akshobhya, Ratnasambhava, Amitabha, Amoghasiddhi. Avalokitesvara there, Guan Yin. Tara. This is, I guess, sutras, manuscripts of Pancharaksha, 5 protector deities of Vajrayana Buddhism. There are 180,000 sects of Buddhism. I'm not even going to pronounce all these. We'll just collectively refer to them as the Pancharaksha goddesses. Worshipped singly or collectively as a magic circle or mandala to grant longevity and prosperity, the central deity being Mahapratsara. Let's see, the language is Sanskrit, the script is Nawari. Common feature of the illustration is the dark sky, sun, moon, stars. Illustrations have no relation to the text, added after the manuscript. And there are all the different ones. Karandavyuha is a Mahayana sutra that was compiled at the end of the 4th century CE, or beginning of the 5th century CE. It is notable for its presentation of the Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara as the supreme Buddhist divinity, a great cosmic Purusha. Here Avalokitesvara is in his creative power, as he is said to be the origin of various heavenly bodies and major divinities to rescue the people who are suffering. Let's see. Great Hell. Mara's daughters alluring Siddhartha. Sermon. Looks like they were kind of put over text. The images, huh? Sometimes when I hear people talking Chinese, especially in Shanghai, there are tones that sound like French, like they're speaking French. Let's see, spread of the religion abroad. Patronage of royal dynasties, largely responsible for the spread of the religion, not only in the subcontinent but also beyond it. The Maurya Emperor Asaka said to have introduced and propagated Buddhist faith in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, a flourishing state. Buddhist center at Nagapattinam, mainly due to the zeal of devotees from Malay and Sumatra and the Chinese adherents to the faith. Actual date of diffusion into the regions of Central Asia, South Asia, China, North Korea, Japan is not known with certainty. Buddhist activity in Tibet said to have begun with the arrival of the Santara Kishida and the Padmasambhava in the 8th century CE. It's quite a bit of time later. Central Asia, vast repertoire of Buddhism and Buddhist art belongs to various periods. As a matter of fact, all important trade routes through which Buddhism traveled converged at this place. Chinese pilgrims provide interesting accounts of Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism practiced here. Let's see. There are confirmed accounts of Buddhism entering China maybe as early as 2 BC, but in 65 BC they have a historical record under Emperor Ming of Han Dynasty introducing Buddhism in China. Thereafter, some prominent Buddhist missionaries visited China from India. From the 4th to 6th century, a large number of Buddhist texts were translated into Chinese. This was a time when the cult of Amitabha was established. Henceforth, the cult played an important part in the history of Buddhism. Found that early Buddhist art in these regions was primarily Indian inspiration, but from the 9th century CE, indigenous art traits were becoming dominant. So China developed some of its own styles around the 800s, huh? Ahsoka. There's a pagoda. I think if you're going to pick out one piece of art and architecture to show the transmutation of Buddhism from India across Asia to Japan, it should be the pagoda, which were originally stupas to hold the relics of the Buddha and sutras, parts of temples, really just a mound. Then they developed into an architectural tourist attraction, moved from the back to the front of the temple by the time they reach Asia, and become multi-tiered towers by the time they hit Japan. China as well. Japan is a distillation of East Asian art and architecture. Let's now go up to the 4th floor and see the other permanent exhibit, which is the Silk Road. There's an exhibit on the Silk Road. So I think maybe it's Japanese only for this exhibit. Chinese on the audio guide. I got a good dose. The last museum exhibit I think I saw that explained the differences between Theravada and Mahayana was the in Dublin, right next to Dublin Castle. There's a collection, the Chester Beatty collection, is it? Chester Beatty Museum. Essentially, it's a manuscript library museum, and it functions as a museum of theology, since most of the books he was collecting were Qurans and Buddhist sutra and that kind of stuff. All the different world religions, really. So now we're up on the top floor by the Ethnic Minorities Gallery, huh? Currency exhibit. Ethnic Minority Gallery. Just the Jade. Yeah, it's the Jade Gallery and the Furniture Gallery. Maybe I went up one too far. So on the 2nd, I went up to the... Thought I was on the 4th here. Let me find the last exhibit. Make a new video.